Well, that was another cracking race in Formula E, wasn't it? Third round of the season, we headed to Chile, Santiago, and after Marrakesh, we were thinking, you know what? Formula E Season 5 could actually be the best season of Formula E. Loads of new viewers, we got the new cars, attack mode, but Saudi Arabia, the first round, was a little bit dodgy, and so there were still question marks about whether Formula E was back. And my God, yes it is. Formula E in Santiago. I'm going to put this statement out there, and sometimes I think it's probably just because I've just seen the race, but honestly, I've slept on it. I think this was the best race of the season. I think, in my personal opinion, this was better than Marrakesh. But when we get a little bit later on onto your reactions from the race, then you will see that not all of you share this opinion. But just a quick one from me. If you do enjoy Formula 1 and Formula E content on a daily and weekly basis, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell to see all the latest Formula 1 and Formula E news. Now, back on to the weekend. We started off with practice, and it didn't really look like there was a main front runner, and I suppose the biggest story from practice was Sebastian Buemi building his car in practice 1, and it looked very unlikely if he would get out for practice 2, and with no running in Formula E, that's a lot of question marks on the table. But somehow the Nissan boys did a fantastic job, and qualifying after a crazy session saw Lucas di Grassi get pole position with Sebastian Buemi in second place and Pascal Wehrlein in third. A really good job from the German, who is hoping to actually partake in his first Formula E race. I mean, last time in Marrakesh, obviously he did make lap 1, but that was it. He didn't even finish lap 1 really. Straight into the pits after damage, so brilliant job from him. We also saw Sam Bird, Daniel Abt and Stoffel van Dorn in the Super Pole shootout. A really good job from Stoffel, and it was a crazy qualifying all round. We saw the two Techeetah cars of Lotter and Verne right at the back, Da Costa right at the back as well, and championship leader Jerome D'Ambrosio 21st. However, the biggest talking point coming out of qualifying was that the man on pole position, Lucas di Grassi, Audi's pace finally showing up, thank goodness, got disqualified. And this reminds me so much of last season, where it's not going his way whatsoever at the beginning of the year. He's had a tough 2 first races, and now after smashing qualifying, he got disqualified. And the reason for this is how he described it as the most stupid rule in motorsport, and part of me can agree a little bit. And it's that on your in-lap, so qualifying was finished, and on his in-lap he used the brakes too much, and because that overheats the brakes, we saw last time crashes in the pit lane. And yeah, new rule in Formula E this week, needs to go, and so he started from the very back. So moving on then to the E-Prix, it was Buemi on pole position with Pascal Wehrlein in second and Sam Bird in third place. Now, first few laps of the race, pretty calm, to be totally honest with you. Nothing too crazy, no crazy moves, and the majority of people actually kept their nose clean. The main story at the beginning of the race, I would say, was Sam Bird. Sam Bird seeming to find a little bit of pace and slowly trying to work his way up to the front, made a naughty little move on Pascal Wehrlein into turn 1. And it really looked like Sam Bird was going to have the pace to really challenge for the lead. But it was whether Sebastian Buemi and the Nissan had what it takes to really hold him off. And we know Sam Bird, plenty of experience in Formula E. That was going to be the big question. Further back, we had a few scrappage. We saw Tom Dillman on the very first lap lose complete power. We then saw Max Gunther also lose complete power, which brought out the safety car, which, well, the full course yellow, which is practically a virtual safety car. We saw that happen as well. But we also saw a lot of carnage in terms of, I suppose, little smashes, little spins, and I think that's why I enjoyed this race so much, is that because it was so hot, the cars, we've never had these hot temperatures in Formula E, especially with the Gen 2 car, and this is what we're going to go on to talk to with Antonio Felix da Costa. People were conserving their battery, trying to save as much energy as possible, an issue we saw late on in the race, and that really spiced things up. But also, because that Formula E in its nature is street circuits that aren't always on purpose-built circuits, we saw incidents like Da Costa. Now, Da Costa, Lotterer and Verne I mean, this was happening all over the place at the back of the field. It really was. They hadn't really worked their way up through the field. Overtaking was difficult. We then saw Lotterer slam into the back of Da Costa. Da Costa slammed into the back of Jean-Eric Vergne. Vergne around Da Costa, damaged his front wing. Vergne to the back of the grid. And it was crazy because we hadn't really seen any of these guys who many people consider both the BMW cars and the Techeetah cars to be the best on the grid, and ultimately both Da Costa and Vergne would not finish. Mainly, I would say, because of this incident. Vergne seemed to have some issue with the back of his car, and likewise Da Costa with the front of his car. But I think that's what made this race so great. We also saw Lucas di Grassi slam into the back of Jose Maria Lopez. That was another one where it just seemed like there was no grip. If you went offline a slight bit, or other cars in front, you couldn't judge that they were trying to save power and, I suppose, save temperatures in a way on the battery, then it really did end up screwing your race. And that's exactly what happened with Alexander Sims, which, I tell you what, very strange incident. This was a very strange incident. Just before the safety car, I believe, for Max Günther, Sims actually was working his way up the grid really nicely. I believe he started down in P8, and he was up into about 5th position, and he was doing a really good job. He had Eduardo Mortara in front of him, who himself was having a crazy weekend. That car has been a backmarker car, so the fact that he was so far up was really good to see. But Sims went in a little too heavy on the, I suppose it's around the long curve that had this little chicane in the middle of it. It was a really strange corner. I believe it was turn 10, I believe it was. And Sims, I mean, I was going to say straight into the back of Eduardo Mortara, but it was the tiniest contact. Mortara spun round, and it really, I mean, the stewards will see more of this than us, but it didn't look like there was contact, in my opinion. But it was a very strange incident, but ultimately it did lead to Sims having a penalty at the end of the race, which we'll talk on in a little bit, really hurt him in his rookie year. But also, Stoffel Vandoorne, we just had the safety car. I keep calling it safety car, full course yellow, for Max Günther. Stopping on circuit, he was having a really good race, and actually, if he didn't have that incident, very well could have sneaked on the podium maybe, which would have been a brilliant job in a Dragon car. But he's someone that has had a difficult start. But Stoffel Vandoorne, someone who also has had a really difficult start, finished last once again, did not finish. He had a really strong race as well, a really good weekend in making it into Super Pole in that car that I think's the worst car on the grid, was maintaining his pace, but through turns 3, messed it up a little bit defending, couldn't get it turned in, understeered into the wall, race over. And a very similar thing happened to Sebastian Buemi, race leader at this point. We saw attack mode again working really well. It's that extra element this time of, can they keep it out of the barriers? Which I don't think we've really seen too much of this season in Formula E. And this circuit was wide. But because of the unpredictable nature of the surface of the track and the marbles in the runoff area, which make the grip just completely disappear, we saw drivers like Vandoorne and eventually race leader Sebastian Buemi bottle it into the wall. Buemi, who was leading in a car that, well, Buemi hasn't won for 2 seasons now. And you got to feel for him, because at one point he was regarded as by far the best driver in Formula E. It was looking like he was going to be back to where he belonged, back at the top, but no, a bottle from Sebastian Buemi, lost his front wing, Bird goes into the lead, Wehrlein into P2, Sims at this point up into P3, crazy. Really was. And at this point as well, it's closing into the laps to the end of the race. Bird was leading, but Wehrlein had one attack mode left, and when he went through that attack, he went for a move into turn 1. Bird defended well, but Wehrlein made an incredible, I suppose, split-second decision to go through attack mode while he was already being pushed offline, and he had one chance to get it. Went around the outside of turn 12, but couldn't make it stick. Bird is your race winner, his first win of Season 5, and is the only driver currently to win in every single season in Formula E. There's only one other man that can do it, and that is Lucas di Grassi, but he is yet to take a win this year, yet to take a podium. Wehrlein got P2, and after Alexander Sims' penalty for hitting Eduardo Mortara, it was Daniel Abt taking Audi's first podium of the season, and now 5 of the 11
it's probably
teams
not a surprise
have
if some of you
in
guys
Formula
have
E
followed
this
the channel
season,
for a
which
while.
is really
It's Pascal
brilliant
Vergne,
to see.
someone
But
who I rate
driver of
so
the day,
highly, and I think
I
he's
have
going to
gone
do so
with
well
in Formula E, but I think in this particular race, there were so many people I really wanted to pick for driver of the day. Sam Bird drove an incredible race. Eduardo Mortara in one of the worst cars on the grid in P4. That's a mega. Robin Frins, 15 to 5th. Mitch Evans, 11th to 6th. And I think Alexander Sims, a really big shout if he'd have managed to not get that penalty, because I tell you what, he really proved that he deserved to be in Formula E. Likewise, Jerome D'Ambrosio getting up to 8th. Turvey from 18th, and again a terrible car getting points in the Neo. So, look, it was really hard to choose, but for me, Wehrlein was the standout one because of the fact this is his first race in Formula E. You know, it's not like Jerome D'Ambrosio, I suppose, when, even last time out when he won, very conservative driver D'Ambrosio, gets those moves done when he needs to, but Wehrlein was looking quick, looking feisty, and judging by the reactions of Dilbad Gill, team principal of Mahindra, they did not think they had the pace this weekend. So I really do believe Wehrlein drove the socks off that car in his first competitive race, learning battery management, which I think was his letdown in the end. I think if he'd have I suppose it was probably a Mahindra problem more than Wehrlein, we don't really know. Probably actually a bit of both, because I think we could tell that Wehrlein was inexperienced, because the way Sam Bird was defending made it very difficult for Wehrlein to overtake, and if you looked closely enough, Bird seemed to know a little bit better and have better exit off the corner and seemed to brake a little bit earlier to make that happen. So experience, I think, was the key today. Bird had the edge, and I really wanted to give it to Sam Bird, but just for me, the fact that Wehrlein was so close in arguably an inferior car, but I think you can probably throw that argument out the window. Because he was so close, for me, that is why he gets driver of the day. But so many people you really could choose today. It was unbelievable. But now we've got a little bit of time to focus on your thoughts from the race. After every race, I put up on my community page over on YouTube, which is very easy to find if you head over to the channel. I always put up a little thing, a picture and just a caption of your thoughts from the race. And I tried to look at my favourite of those responses and just relay my thoughts back to you guys. So the first one and the most liked one was from WRC or WCR Fish. That says his thoughts, Wehrlein. Plain and simple Wehrlein. So someone agrees with me, which is brilliant, because I think a lot of people probably thought that Van Dorn would be the biggest star coming from Formula 1 this year, but I think Wehrlein really is moulding into that role really nicely. Edward Smith saying it was excellent. Lots of surprises, crashes, battles. The only problems was the stewards' decisions after the race, and I think that was a big problem, which I imagine I'll be discussing tomorrow on the Formula E Word at 8 o'clock with Sean and Alex Zaffro, so look out for that one. And also this week, the Formula E Zone podcast. Had lots of fun doing the first episode of that one last time, which you can either listen to on my channel or on their official platforms. But Edward Smith, I agree. Crazy decisions, and I think was unclear for new fans. But today, that's a whole separate issue. But I think Formula E is still a lot better than Formula 1. But I think the way it was portrayed was a little messy, like the Degrassi incident, like the Alexander Sims incident. So I think a lot of people probably a little bit annoyed at that. But I tell you what, something that Lewitt has said, Vindra 160, a lot of people have mentioned that, I suppose I haven't mentioned too much, was Felipe Massa. He had an okay weekend, Massa. I think it was his strongest weekend yet. He had a very difficult section midway through the race. He got hit up the inside, I believe, by one of the Dragon cars, and then Roland went to overtake him and rammed him into the wall. So that was gutting from Roland, who himself didn't finish the race. But just to finish off, we got our Drivers' Championship. D'Ambrosio still leads by 1 point over Sam Bird, with Antonio Felix da Costa still in third place. And in our Teams' Championship, it's Virgin that takes the lead. Mahindra now takes second place, and Techeetah in third. But that's your lot for your race review for Santiago. Like I just mentioned, I'll be live tomorrow on the Formula E Word, and the Formula E Zone podcast will be out this week in a race that saw a record number of finishes, as in only 14 drivers finished in Formula E. We've got 5 out of the 11 teams already on the podium this season, and only 1 team hasn't scored points. Formula E this year it's hotting up. It really is hotting up, and I hope to see you next time in Mexico City. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.